Good evening, everyone. We'll call this first meeting of the Board of County Commissioners for 2018 to order. At this time, we'll begin with an invocation led by Commissioner Frank Akins.
Bow with me, if you will. Lord, we thank you for this new year that we find ourselves in. We ask that your presence be here with us tonight. Lord, we pray that all that we do be in the best interest of all citizens and be pleasing to you. We pray, Lord, for our first responders and our military, many of whom are serving in this cold weather. And Lord, we pray that you'll provide them with warmth, comfort, and protection. May all that we do be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda tonight is a public hearing.
Mr. Matthews is going to give you an overview as to this text amendment associated with your Unified Development Ordinance.
Good evening, Commissioners, Manager. Tonight, what you have here is a draft for a text change to the UDO. With a little background here. There's been some concern raised that with our current ordinance, there's very little public input and no commissioner decision-making process when it came to the location of facilities such as solar and wind or the renewable type of energy facilities in the county. Those were all allowed under the major utility category previously by special use permit. They were previously allowed by right in heavy industrial and light industrial. There was a text change recently where the commissioners did remove major utilities from light industrial and heavy industrial as a by right use. It's still allowed for major utilities, which included wind and solar, to be by special use permit in all the other districts. And some of the concern that we've heard is then, because the special use permit is really a quasi-judicial process, it requires evidence and testimony in order for the permit to be issued. And in most cases, adjacent property owners and citizens have a difficult time in actually providing evidence and testimony to really refute the location of some of these facilities. So there's oftentimes very little public input when it comes into the location of those facilities. And because it's a special use permit, the Board of Adjustment is the only board within the county that actually makes the decision for that permit. The commissioners have no role to play in the decision for that. So we were asked to look at and come up with a scenario or an option for where the board may have some ability to make some decisions when it comes to the location of these facilities, and also to give some greater public input. So that's what you have here tonight. Just want to talk about what those possible options are. Essentially, in order to do this, they would have to be placed into a zoning district. And currently, the draft proposal would be to put wind and solar and other renewable energy facilities within the RA 200 zoning district as a special use permit. That requires a couple of things. If it isn't an RA 200 district, requires a rezoning, which the commissioners obviously would make a decision on a rezoning facility. And our ordinance also allows for a dual process of, if someone is requesting a rezoning, they can also request the special use permit is actually combined with that. It's not a quasi-judicial process anymore. It actually goes through the same rezoning process. So the commissioners would have a greater role in that. If the property is zoned RA 200, then it could apply for a special use permit, but that would go to the Board of Adjustment if the property is already zoned RA 200. In this scenario, what we've done is we've taken, which is section 25.020C, talks about public, civic, and institutional categories, specifically number 15, utility or public service facilities. what we're recommending here is to actually take out of the major facility category renewable energy sources and create its own category. Before, they were all lumped together. So anything that was a energy facility, whether it was a standard energy facility or renewable, was all lumped into major utility category. This text change would create essentially a specific category for renewable energy facilities: wind, solar, heat, biomaterials, plant materials, geothermal, all fall into that category. It would remove it from major utilities. And then that would be placed specifically in the RA200 zoning district. I want to show you that. The text change would include the table of uses, which would be amended. If I can slide this over. It's not taking up the screen. Anyway, this is the energy facility category here. We added, you see, it would be a special use permit under RA200. It would not be allowed in any other zoning districts. And then major utilities, which you can't see, unfortunately, the screen's truncated, would then be added back to be a special use permit under LI and a use by right under HI. Specifically because now, at this point, the land-intensive uses would be removed. You would have things like water towers and other facilities would be allowed back in those zoning districts, and the really heavy and land-intensive uses would now fall under more of the renewable energy facility. So those are the text changes that we have, the logic behind why we were requested to consider a possible text change. I'll certainly answer any questions you may have, but that's what we have for you tonight.
Mr. Helms?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Clearly understand where you're trying to go here.
Sure.
Is there anything in the text change that would prevent a homeowner that's putting up solar for the individual property?
Good question. We had the planning board ask that very same question. That doesn't fall under utility. So on your home, that's not a utility use. That may be specifically for your home, but we don't consider that or classify that as a utility. So that's why that doesn't fall under that.
Well, I understand, but I've seen homeowners association try to prevent a member from using solar, and I
Sure.
don't want them to come to this text amendment and say, see, I told you.
So you can't, no, you could not.
And I think the state, under the state statutes, that you can't prevent a homeowner from doing that.
Well, this would not prevent a homeowner
Okay.
in these scenarios.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, sir.
This time we will open the public hearing. We have a few folks signed up. First, we have a Norman Stryker. You have not indicated for or against. Did you wish to speak about the public hearing, or did you have another issue? Okay, I'll bring you up during the informal comments. In a few moments, under informal comments. I'll call you. And how about Lisa Johnson? Same? Okay, thank you very much. Baxter Starnes.
I'm Baxter Starnes. I live at 4903 Parkwood School Road, and my wife and I have lived there for 43 years, and it's important to us what happens here in our county, and I am in favor of this text amendment because it will help preserve the character of our communities and also give the county commissioners an opportunity to review such large in possible industrial size projects for solar or wind, and also that the county commissioners are elected by the citizens of Union County, and so I am in favor of this text amendment.
Thank you. John Young.
Commissioners. My name is John Young. I'm at 4404 Nesbitt Road, and here in Monroe, in the county, and I'm here to express that I am for this amendment. I think it is a very responsible action that the county is taking especially when you not only look at the current solar development, but the proposed solar development that right now is in front of the State Utilities Commission, that I believe most of you are aware of, that if passed would have a 700-acre solar farm come down to be considered by the county. A number of us are residents that surround that area, and I think the biggest thing that we're looking at is that the county take, from a planning and a zoning perspective, a responsible and look at those activities, but also be able to take those up in a public setting as well, and that there be an extended set of approvals in that process. So definitely for this change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was all we had to speak, so at this time we will close the public hearing. And that will take us to our informal comments. And now, Mr. Stryker, we'll let you speak.
My name is Norman Stryker. I live at 4619 Pfeiffer Road in Marshville, North Carolina. And I'm here to request that you reconsider the naming of Pfeiffer Road. What I would like to say is, you can imagine our surprise on Tuesday morning after the commission meeting in December that the Pfeiffer Road name was changed to Trawick Farm Road, especially since we had met with Mr. Hanson at his meeting on October 24th, that neither family name would be considered or selected because there was contention between the two families. Blessed Road was proposed by Rick Trawick, since he and Bill Ivy are cancer survivors, and Blessed Road seemed like an appropriate name. This was voted on and approved by the attendees of the meeting with no dissenting vote. So now we were told by the Inquirer Journal that the BOC approved Trawick Farm Road, even though it is a family name and there is already a Trawick Road in the Marshville area. This could be very confusing to emergency, fire, and rescue calls. This is a very important point, since this could affect the health and well-being of those living on that portion of Pfeiffer Road. The Ivy family had 18 signed requests, and it's to change the road to include Ivy in the name. All 18 persons, 19 attended the meeting with Mr. Hanson. The proposal was given to Mr. Hanson at the meeting. What happened to it, and we don't know. And don't these people get some consideration? And since we were led to believe by Mr. Hanson that a decision had been made not to include Ivy or Trawick in the road name, the meeting attendees unanimously agreed on Blessed Road to be presented to this board in December. We thought we were all honorable people, so that was the purpose for our attending this meeting after the naming of Blessed Road was voted on and approved with no dissenting votes at the meeting that Mr. Hanson called. We respectfully request that you reconsider naming Pfeiffer Road Blessed Road as approved by the majority of the parties involved. Again, I would like to just point out the fact that there is already a Trawick Road in the Marshville area. So we would respectfully request your reconsidering this.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lisa Ivy Johnson. I live at 4525 Pfeiffer Road, and I'm also asking to have the road name reconsidered. As my uncle pointed out, there is a Trawick Road already in Marshville, and that is within 4 miles of the proposed road they're wanting to rename Trawick Road, or Trawick Farm Road. So that would entail, cost people lives for 2 roads. If something were to happen, just by leaving off the name of farm when they were reporting something. And that would cause a conflict. And by the emails that Mr. Hanson sent out, no road shall be named close to the same. That's why we could not rename Pfeiffer Road Pfeiffer East or East Pfeiffer Road, because it was conflict with the Pfeiffer Road that was going to remain that was split. And that's why we're asking to reconsider this. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes our informal comments. It's now time for additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. Mr. Helms?
I would ask that we take consent agenda item 4, water quality assistant, and move it to old business.
Okay. We'll make that the only item. We'll make it 9A, but the only item under old business. The others? I have one item I would like to add to the consent agenda. We need to transfer $100,000 from contingency to the sheriff's office for outside legal counsel and waive the county's procurement policy for legal services on consent.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. And now our consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent is.
We have a motion to approve as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. That'll take us to old business. Commissioner Helms.
Yeah, I had questions on this when it talks about the Anson County water and its condition, I guess you'd call. And I know that being on the board at the Lancaster Union County water treatment plant, I know there's very strict requirements on the water that we send into Union County. And I'd like to understand also the how we can't have that confirmed by the state, which is a daily process down at our plant in Union County, Lancaster. So I'd like to understand more about that.
Sure, Commissioner, I'd be happy to respond to that. Well, as the Commissioner knows and the board knows, the difference between Catawba and Anson is that we are 50% owner of the Catawba water treatment plant, so we can control with our partner Lancaster Water and Sewer District the day-to-day operations of that facility to make sure there are no issues for our water supply. And that is 80% of our water supply right now comes from that facility. Anson, we have a purchase water agreement with. So we are a customer of Anson County. We buy water from them. And our agreement with them requires that they meet state and federal water quality requirements at that point of connection. And the challenge we have is that for the past 2 years in particular, we have had concerns and challenges with one class of chemicals that are in the water that are tested for only quarterly. So it's not a daily test, it's a quarterly test. These are called disinfection byproducts. And they are a second tier water quality issue where you're not testing for it on a day-to-day basis because the concern is about long-term exposure to these chemicals in the water. So not this past summer, but the summer before, issues came up in our monitoring on our distribution system. So we're required not only to meet those at the plant, as is Anson, but you're required to monitor for your water quality within your distribution system. Because the challenge with these disinfection byproducts is that they're a reaction between the chlorine that's used for disinfection and trace amounts of organic material that are in the water. And the challenge is the longer it's in the pipe and the warmer the water temperature is, the chemical reaction continues. So the challenge we have is that Anson's water quality meets those federal standards and state standards at the point of connection, but as it ages through our system, going to our customer, it continues to break down. So by the time we reach some of the far ends of that distribution system coming from Anson, we're having water quality issues. So a year and a half ago, we had issues to the point where we had to do a response plan back to the state saying, we're looking at this, we went out, we flushed some lines and did some other actions. This year, this summer, the situation was further exacerbated, and we actually received a notice of violation. So we got to the point where our water quality in our system triggered a violation from the state. We have to do public notice to all of our customers that are on the Anson supply, and we're required to give the state a remedial action plan or an action plan saying what we're going to do about it. So that's what the scope of study is for, is to work with Anson County and also with our own utility to see what can be done either at the Anson County Water Treatment Plant to change that water quality so it is not a problem when it gets to Union, or what can we do once it reaches Union County to address that issue to make sure we're meeting standards in the system.
What has our conversations been with Anson on this?
We actually have a meeting set up for next week with the county manager, our county manager, myself, and the utility director. We've had several conversations back and forth at the utility manager level, and that's why we're elevating that conversation to a little bit higher level to see how we can advance this issue.
I'd make a motion that we delay this. I think also next meeting you are going to present an update to the master plan or review of the master plan is what our conversation was today.
What I mentioned to you when we spoke earlier today was that on the 16th, Ed will be presenting his budget overview, and a portion of that overview, in addition to operations, will also touch on the master plan.
Well, I think that would be good for us to consider this after we hear the full story. Because was there an RFP out for this $170,000 project?
No, Black & Veatch is our master plan consultant, and we're using that as part of the master planning they've done. They're the most familiar with our water distribution system and have that expertise.
Okay, we have a motion, Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the concern that I had on this was, especially being a customer there and getting those notices, what does this have to do with Charlotte-Mecklenburg purchasing? The distance from Charlotte-Mecklenburg to our service area is even greater, I would think, than Anson County.
The issue with Charlotte is right now we have some very small interconnects with the city of Charlotte on our water distribution system. We have a couple of 8-inch, I think we might have one 12-inch water main. So one of the alternatives, if we can't fix the problem with Anson or it's too expensive for us to put in a treatment alternative, can we look at some short-term purchase from Charlotte to meet that short-term need until a Yakima project is online? So it's to look at that, and would also add long-term benefit to both utilities by having better interconnects for dealing with emergencies.
And that's, you know, this is not the first time I've addressed this concern with you, especially in some of the issues that we're dealing with. The better connections to Mecklenburg County, I hope, would be to help Union County, not to be to send water to Mecklenburg County later on from any other sources that we would have. We've got great concerns with water availability in Union County without trying to facilitate becoming a supplier for Charlotte-Mecklenburg later on. Is that, please assure me that that's not what's going on.
This is looking at emergency interconnects for how we meet short-term needs.
Yet it seems to me that this is specific to an issue related to our water quality, and simply a means of analyzing the system to determine where those problems are coming from and to alleviate those problems.
Exactly.
When is our report due to the state?
I think you know Andy Neff is the director of our Water and Wastewater Operations Division.
Good evening, Commissioners, County Manager. We have an administrative order as a result of the violation, and we have to provide a report to the state by the 31st of March. So this study is going to help us on this specific issue to formulate our action plan on what we can do, either by helping Anson or doing something with our system to improve our ability to control the water quality in our system.
I certainly appreciate both Commissioner Rushing and Commissioner Helm's concern, but it appears to me that it's timely and we need to move forward to address the violation. Any further discussion?
How long will this? excuse
Sure,
me, sir.
sure, go ahead.
How long will this study take?
The study is phased. The plan is to get enough information. The study will probably last until April or May, but the idea is that we will have enough sufficient information to provide the state details on what we can do before the study is actually concluded.
Commissioner Rushing?
Thank you. I have no problem with doing the study. I have no problem with voting tonight to start the study. Again, there's a lot of other issues that we're looking at when put together as a whole. I am concerned about the direction we're going with some of the water issues, with especially waiting on water from the Yadkin project, the transmission lines, things like that, and how we're going to be moving water from east to west, and very concerned that we're bypassing some folks with big transmission lines versus lines that can be tapped onto. So I don't have any problem with this. It just seemed it was very wide in the scope of, especially when we started including Charlotte-Mecklenburg into the solution versus, and the distance is even greater from Anson County. So, I don't have any trouble voting tonight to start the study if you would consider that. But I do have some concerns that we need to start addressing soon with utilities about the direction that we're going in.
And that's all this agenda item does, is authorize this study to move forward.
With that
Commissioner
comment, I'll withdraw my motion, is because I agree with Commissioner Rushing. Doing the study is one thing, but I don't want this to be perceived as authority to increase your interconnect with Mecklenburg County or anything until we have good data to substantiate the need.
For Commissioner Akmus?
I make a motion that we accept the scope of services as shown as the attached task order 2017-03 with Black and Veatch, authorize the county manager to approve the agreement upon legal review.
Okay, we've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none.
Thank you.
That takes us to new business. Item 10 is our Workforce Development Board appointment to fill an unexpired term of private sector representative, Mr. Nelson. Need any discussion on that, County Manager?
I don't believe we do, unless the
Okay,
board
we
has
have-
questions.
We have Mr. Jack Sherritt, President of GM Nameplate, that has submitted an application, and I will move that we accept that application. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Item 11.
The next two items actually will be presented by Ed BOCC, our Executive Director of Public Works. This relates to the Yadkin River Water Supply Project. The two items speak directly to the raw water intake pumping station, as well as the water treatment plant and the finished water. And this is necessary in order for us to consider a project delivery method of, I think you refer to it today, Ed, as progressive design build. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So we have a presentation tonight that I will be giving along with Kevin Mosteller. Kevin is the Senior Vice President with HDR, and HDR is our Program Manager on this project. Just as a quick overview, more for the audience than anyone else, this is about the Yadkin River Water Supply Project. And as Ms. Cota was saying, the purpose of the agenda item is to talk to the board about how we can go about with the design and construction of this project and what delivery method do we use. And the state has authorized a number of delivery methods that can be used in terms of how you design and construct this, and has created a very prescriptive process. Part of that process being a formal written authorization from the board based upon criteria that are formally adopted by the board. So again, we're going to provide a brief description, talking about what design build means and what the marketplace looks like, the process we went through in selecting the delivery method, what design build procurement looks like, and then again, a summary of the statutory actions needed. And again, this will serve as the presentation for both agenda items 11 and 12, even though you'll take them on as separate agenda items. Again, just for those in the audience that may not be familiar with the project, the Acton Water Supply Project is an effort we've been working on for more than 7 years as a direct project. We've been studying an eastern water supply for more than a decade in Union County, and the need for this is to provide a new source of water off of the Acton River to meet the needs of the county's customers within the Acton Basin. And the project consists of a new water intake on Lake Tillery, a approximately 22 mile pipeline to what will be a new water treatment plant located in Union County, and then a major finished water transmission main to connect up to other existing transmission mains in the county to be able to get that water into our distribution system. Total program cost that we're looking at right now, and this is updated as of just a couple of weeks ago, is about $205 million. And again, the level of uncertainty here yet is still a plus and minus 20%. And we'll be defining that as the project moves forward. You know, the board, when they directed us to bring this project, this item up for discussion at the last board meeting, specifically asked about where our finished water lines are now in the New Salem area and how this project may or may not impact on that. And hopefully your screens are a little easier to read than this screen, but the light blue lines on this map are all of our existing finished water lines that are in our system in this area right now. And although it's a little challenging to see, I want the board to note that we have finished water lines running underneath this dark blue line here and along this alignment here up to New Salem, connecting in with our other existing water lines and looping this area here along with some other distribution system. So the project as currently configured has a raw water line coming from the intake through Oakboro down to the New Salem area and continuing to approximately this area now. And as the board knows, we're currently in negotiations for site acquisition for a water treatment plant in this general area as authorized by the board. And then from the water treatment plant, a finished water pipeline. Originally, there were some 3 different sites that were under consideration for a water treatment plant site. This site here, another site further to the east, and a site further to the north. And through the master planning effort, it was situated, eliminated down to these 2 sites, and as part of the planning and site availability, we focused on a particular parcel that we brought to the board now negotiating with. And to the commissioner's comments of what do we do with finished water in this area, I just want to reiterate that we have an existing 12-inch water main, which is a sizable water line that runs along 218 all the way over to New Salem. From New Salem, continues south along New Salem Road, all the way down to this area here, and then continues across into Unionville with some distribution lines coming off of it. So we have the ability right now through existing water lines to serve this area and to serve customers along this line. I know we have some customers along these lines now. So moving the water treatment plant from a location here, any place along this line up to New Salem, doesn't change that nexus of our ability to serve customers in that area. This 36-inch line that would come off the treatment plant is not a line that you would tap for new customers. It's designed to be a major transmission line to move water from one end of the county to the other and connect up with our major transmission lines, not as a retail service. And again, underlying this light blue underneath here is an existing water line already, and you can see we have other water lines in this area. So within this area of Morgan Mill Road, which is New Salem Road where we're looking, there's existing water service there right now. Little history and status on the project. Again, the project started back really in 2012-13 with our negotiations with the town of Norwood on our agreement to partner with them on an intake and rural water transmission main. Activities this year is that we selected through a competitive selection process HDR as our program manager to assist in not only helping us manage the program, but also acting as our owner's agent as we move forward into a design build, if that's what the board authorizes. We have achieved our permitting for the interbasin transfer back in May. The board knows there are some ongoing administrative appeals, there's potential of ongoing litigation. We have moved forward with our partners moved forward, Norwood, with the acquisition of the raw water intake property necessary for the new raw water intake pump station. We are in negotiations for the water treatment plant site acquisition. We've done another level of community outreach with a series of meetings along the right-of-way of the proposed line. We obviously continue to monitor our current water demand. We are moving forward with an expansion of the Catawba water treatment plant to meet other short-term needs that we have, and the design of that expansion is now about 90% complete. And that expansion schedule will be online in 2019, and we are planning for the procurement of design builders to execute the project through design build delivery that we'll be talking about this evening. So our targeted schedule moving forward is that with the board's approval tonight, we will issue 2 requests for qualification for design build firms and issue them sometime later this month. In June, we will make a selection. We will go through the permitting and project approvals between now and February of 2019. Easement acquisition would start for the pipeline in March of 2019. The goal is to complete the design of the program up to about 60% by June of 2019. Negotiate with those selected design build firms a guaranteed maximum price, which is what GMP stands for, and then start construction in 2019 and start up the plant by the first quarter of 2022. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Kevin Mosteller to talk more specifically about the design build, the marketplace, and project delivery.
Good evening, Happy New Year to everybody. So the water wastewater marketplace in North Carolina is changing rapidly right now. HDR, our firm, has been involved in a lot of transportation work. And the transportation market in North Carolina changed dramatically toward what we'll call design build for tonight, back in the early 2000s. And it's kind of a mature marketplace now. And the water wastewater market is right now in the process of doing that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Back in 2013, the General Assembly passed the House Bill 857, which moved toward allowing local government to select firms to build projects on a qualifications basis rather than a hard bid basis. And so that bill in 2013 has really transformed, or began the transformation of the marketplace for delivery of water and wastewater projects. What that bill did, if you look in bold here, it focused on allowing, in Section 4, Article 8, design build contracts, design build bridging contracts, and then public-private partnership construction contracts. And then it rewrote a portion of the legislation, some legislation that was out there regarding construction manager at risk, which has been in place for a few years prior to that. So if you kind of boil that down, we're going to talk tonight really about the 4 most commonly used, and I'm sitting in the back thinking I could say 100%, but I would suggest that 99% or more projects that are done for the water and wastewater industry by local governments in North Carolina right now are being done in one of these four methods. So the first is design bid build. That's what you're kind of used to. That's design it, get it 100% complete, put it on the street, have contractors bid, get the low bid, move it forward. I'm sure you're used to that. We're going to talk a little bit about CMAR, or construction manager at risk. We'll talk about fixed price design build, and then the method that we're actually recommending for these two projects, which is progressive design build. And so we're going to walk through those, excuse me, and then if you have any questions that we go through, that's great. We'll talk about how each method works, as well as some of the advantages and disadvantages of each. So let's talk about design bid build. So in the graphic you see here, and again, this is the one that you're probably most familiar with, you as the owner hold two contracts. You hold a contract with a design engineer, a design professional, and you hold one with a general contractor. And if you look at these next few slides, the blue lines represent contracts, and the black lines represent communication paths. And these are important as it relates to managing risk and then getting a project done under a best value, best outcome approach. So in the design bid build approach that you've long accustomed to, you've got low bid contractor selection. There's multiple contracts for you to manage. You've got to manage the design engineer, you've got to manage your contractor. And to an extent, you're warranting the design documents that you give the contractor to build the project, right? Because that's flowing through you. And so you bear the majority of risk with regard to that design. And then you've kind of reduced the collaboration, and this is really the beauty of what we're proposing tonight, the collaboration between the design firm and the contractor that has to go out there and build it. Because you're typically getting 100% complete before the contractor ever sees the work product. And so you've reduced that collaboration. And so, and under this method, there's not a real good way of choosing a construction company that is anything other than price-based. So another method, construction manager at risk, or I'll refer to it as CMAR. This allows you to still, this still has you holding two contracts to get a project like this one done. You're required to have a contract with a design firm. You're required to have a contract with the construction manager. Some advantage of this approach over the design bid build is you bring those folks on relatively at the same time, and then the two work together. That's why you see the black line. I'll point, I know you're looking at your screen, but the black line between this construction manager and design professional, they can collaborate. So you can have a budget, we'll just say $100 million for one of these two projects, and the two of those two can work together to try to drive this project to meet that budget, and then to enhance it and to take advantage of things that the contractor building it will know that maybe the design professional would not. So you get that input, that's a real advantage. You get to see by that contractor bidding out packages, which are, as I'm pointing to here, are the lower tier contracts and communication paths. You get to competitively bid all of those subcontractor and equipment packages. But again, you're still to an extent, because you hold a contract with the design firm, warranting the design work to the CMAR. And you're still in charge of managing multiple contracts. So one of the things we're going to get to a little bit later is we're proposing two projects here. So under this method, you would have 4 contracts to manage minimum. Another approach is, and there's a lot of different terms for this, but we'll call it bridging design build, where essentially you go out and hire a bridging engineer to go to, say, 30% design, and then put that on the street for contractors or design builder to put in a price, and then once the design builder selected, finish the design, and then go out and build the project. And so in this case, there's a single point of accountability, if you look, with regard to the owner. You've got the design builder who's ultimately responsible for both the design and the construction. And you get to kind of set the price a little bit earlier, so at 30% complete, you kind of know what the price of the job's going to be. The one challenge of this that we don't think is as good as progressive design build is that once you hit 30% complete and someone's priced the job, there's very little chance for you to provide input into that. Because now the price is set, and you've got to go from 30 to 100%, and contractors know the price he's working with, and there's less collaboration. So there's an increased potential for change orders and scope creep and things like that. So the final process, and the one that we're going to get to as a recommendation for these two projects, is progressive design build. In a progressive design build, if you look at this model, we would be, HDR would be in this owner's rep role. So we have a contract to really be an extension of staff. We're doing very little design. It's more of an extension of staff in a program management role. So you go out as the owner and hire a design builder to go both design and execute the project under a qualifications-based selection. And so you still have, some advantages are you've got a single point of responsibility. Off schedule, project's not functional, there's not two different people to point to. You got one group to point to, you got one design builder. There's a great opportunity to accelerate the schedule under this method. And as you get the permitting and other appeals processes behind you, as you know, schedule's really, really key for delivering water to the Yadkin River service area, Yadkin Basin service area. The beauty of this, and I've had a good fortune of actually working as the design builder on one of these, is the high collaboration that your team will have with the design builder doing the work regarding equipment selection, regarding layout and design of the project, and knowing throughout the project what the cost impacts are, and driving that cost to a budget that fits what what your needs. And it promotes a lot of innovation and tons of collaboration as you go through the process. And it does provide, as I mentioned, fewer claims and change orders because you're working to scope the job as a team. As I said, the marketplace for folks like HDR has really changed dramatically in the last few years. A lot of owners, and I'll show you a few in a minute, are using one of these methods as it relates to their projects now. And people are doing it, people are doing them because at the end of the day, you'll see this in the blue there, it just simply makes your life easier. The risks are lower on the project because you're not low bidding every element of the work and running the risk that you get a low bid that can't perform the job. And one of the things we've been really cautious as a team here is that if we have two projects, we can't afford to lose 2 years on a hard bid project where we had an unqualified group bidding and winning the work. You get guaranteed maximum price early, and that's a real advantage to owners. And that you can really design the scope to fit the budget to a large extent. And so a lot of owners really like that. The quals-based selection, that transforms the marketplace because a contractor who doesn't perform on one of these jobs doesn't get to work here or other places, right? They need good references. So their performance on projects is going to be high because they're going to go out of business. This is one of the things we've seen in our transportation market, is contractors stepping up and learning how to deliver excellent work on projects and regardless of the bidding situation. So these are some of the delivery drivers that a lot of folks around the state are now using, and certainly other states as well where the rules have allowed that for longer. This is just a graphic of the Design Build Institute of America, which will highlight that a lot of the advantages, schedule, cost management, as it relates to the low bid, design bid build approach, why the progressive design build or CBAR is an advantage. So, I mean, to me, this is a powerful slide. The legislation changed a few years ago. These are just some of the entities around this North and South Carolina that are now using one of these methods. And I would argue predominantly progressive design build to deliver projects. Charlotte Water just did it for about an $80 million project. We completed one for them for a $25 million project. We're working in Rock Hill on a project that's $150 million. So all of these different owners just in the last few years, and there's more every day, adding to the list of doing projects under one of these methods. So how did we pick progressive design build? Earlier in 2017, truthfully before the IBT was approved, and certainly before there were any appeals, we had hoped to be on an even quicker schedule for getting RFQs out. So we led workshops, which included the executive leadership team for Public Works, and included your engineering staff, the operations team, and then a number of our design build professionals, because we actually operate in this market in a bunch of different ways. So we had a number of professionals from our organization there as well. And so we looked at how do we break this project up? What are some of the definable elements that we could sub-package this together with? And so we really looked at the intake as a discrete component, the raw water line, or possibly even segments, like breaking what is almost 30 miles of raw water line into segments. The water treatment plant would be a definable project element, and then the finished water line was one, or segments. So if you take the segments out, it's really kind of 4 distinct components of work. And so we looked at what is the marketplace competition. But at the end of the day, we desire to have a number of firms pursue this work. So if we have one project, if we have 6 projects, it's going to matter how many people can actually pursue it. What is the bonding capacity of those groups, and how can we, collectively working with your staff, manage that work? So we went through a couple of workshops, and this is just a little picture of of some of the board work we did. We looked at the delivery models that I've talked about. They're the first 4 bullets there: design, bid, build, CMAR, progressive design build, fixed price design build. We even talked about the concept of design, build, operate, which would include bringing someone in to do the operations of the facility after construction, and then public-private partnerships. But as we look through these, you've got the different methods of project delivery. You've got the multiple elements of the project. We looked at, again, bonding capacity of the firms that would be pursuing the work, as well as how unwieldy, or how can we better package this to manage it when we get everything started. So the result recommendation we want to bring tonight is we're recommending that we break this into 2 projects. The one project being the raw water intake on Lake Tillery, and the raw water pipeline across Stanley County into Union County as one project. And then the water treatment plant and the finished water distribution pipeline as a second project. And these are round numbers, but the good part of breaking it up that way is it makes them very similarly sized. They're both about $100 million when you break them that way. By packaging the pipeline into each project, it allows us to work with the design builder to require them to competitively bid a portion of the work. We knew as a team it was going to be important that we're able to stand back up here in the future and communicate the fact that some of this work was absolutely competitively bid, and we've got hard pricing on it, and to make sure that you have local contractors that are able to bid on some of this work. And so we have taken those things into account in the way that we're structuring the RFQ. And so we're putting in a maximum self-performance element for the design builders, and we're ensuring that they will make packages, the percentage we're still having some discussion on, available to be competitively bid so that local contractors can actually participate in these 2 projects. So I'll just talk briefly about how this would look. On this slide, you kind of start with the select design builder. The blue parts are when you kind of make a commitment as an owner. So that's where we're at now, right? We want to issue RFQs. So you'll be in the lead to select the design builder, in this case 2. And so you have a target price. In essence, it's what you have in moving forward in your CIP. So you would design to about 30%, take a look at where your budget is there, find out where you're at, and then you kind of design to 60% and get to, and 60% is a nominal term, right? Plus or minus 60% to the point at which you feel comfortable setting a guaranteed maximum price. Now, all along the way, the beauty of the progressive design build method is your team is sitting in the room with the contractor and with the designer, looking at pricing, and of course we're there as well. And we're looking at the pricing, we're looking at the design layout, and we're optimizing this to fit the budget that you've got, and ensuring that we can move forward on a project that we can fund and that meets the needs that you have going forward. So once you get to GMP, we would come back, you would approve that going forward. That would be the heavy weight of the construction cost. Then we would finish design, and then you'd move into construction. So that's generally the flow chart of progressive design build. The way we're currently moving ahead is to use what we refer to as a one-step process, which is issue an RFQ. We've been working on that document with some your legal team as well as some outside legal support who've been through some alternative delivery projects in the state over the last few years. And so we would issue an RFQ and shortlist firms to interview, possibly more than one interview, but we're still talking through that, and then make a selection. And then what we would be bringing back would be a phase one contract sometime by mid-year. That phase one contract would be largely for the design firm to get to 60%, and then some pre-construction services, which is typically cost estimated. So we'd come back with a phase one contract that we negotiate the price for sometime mid-year, and then there'd be two of those, right, because we got two projects. We would work the 60%, and then we'd come back to you again with the guaranteed maximum price to get each of those two projects complete. That's the plan. There's a couple other things I wanted to point out. You see up here off-ramp option. One of the other beauties of this method is we definitely wouldn't want to use it. We don't think we'd have to use it. But if we get to 60% design, working collaboratively with your team, and we can't negotiate a GMP with the design builder, you've got 60% plans and all that work product, you can move to a different delivery model. And so that is one advantage. The other thing I was going to point out is that given the schedule uncertainty, if you will, on the appeals process, this allows for a lot of checks along the way as to where we are and getting information. And then we didn't bring the real detailed schedule in here. There's a lot of advantages to this method given where we're at with the appeals on the IBT. I think that's my part.
Thank you, Kevin. So I quickly just wanted to run through a summary of the actions that we need from the board tonight. And they are laid out in the agenda abstract with the specific action items. But the statutory requirements require that the board establish criteria for the selection process. One of them is that we can adequately and thoroughly define the project requirements prior to issuance of the RFQ for design builder. And we think we've demonstrated that tonight, that we have a project location, project components, we've established the criteria for the project, the permitting requirements, land requirements, project budget, and schedule. So we think we have met that first criteria that we're going to ask you to adopt. The second is that time constraints of the project can best be met through the design build approach. I think Kevin's presentation just demonstrated that progressive design build has been shown in the industry for a project of this magnitude to save us probably a year or more in terms of overall delivery. And time is obviously of the essence on this project. We need to demonstrate that the county project team can ensure that a quality project can be delivered. To do that, we have selected HDR to be our owner's engineer and to support the progressive design build effort and be the overall project manager. In addition, we have our own staff with our engineering and operations division that will oversee the engineering, operations, maintenance, and startup. We will be contracting for some third-party construction inspection in addition to what the design builder will be doing. And the design build will allow for design to budget, where we will be able to work, as Kevin was saying, with the design build firm, saying, here's how much money we have to build this project, and how do we build it to that budget, and not, here's what we would like to build, tell me how much it's going to cost. We need to demonstrate that Union County has the ability to manage and oversee the project. Again, we have a dedicated project manager in the person of John Shutak, who heads up our CIP group, who is our experienced project manager. We obviously, supporting him, have Scott Honeycutt, our Director of Engineering Division, as well as myself providing that oversight. We have hired HDR as the owner's engineer to support the overall project management effort. We will additionally have additional oversight of engineering, operation, and maintenance. And this process actually allows us to have more input and oversight in the process. Project approach will enhance the county's ability to comply with state statutes, facilitate small business involvement, and not preclude the contracting community. As we've mentioned, the RFQ will not preclude or limit qualified respondents. Provisions for self-performance and competitively bid packages will have, so there'll be limits on how much self-perform work the design bid firm can do and how much they will have to bid out to assure that we get disadvantaged business and local contractors involved. Provisions for historically underutilized businesses will be incorporated. And obviously all this will be done in accordance with Union County procurement policy. And our procurement division has been actively involved in these meetings and developing these documents. We need to demonstrate that we've done an analysis of project delivery options, that has been complete in evaluating advantages and disadvantages. And that's really the presentation that you just saw, really went through looking at those four major design build, alternate design bid build alternatives, design bid build, CMAR, progressive design build, and bridging design build. As mentioned, we also looked at design build operate, and we also looked at a turnkey operation. And from evaluating all of those alternatives, we believe this has the least amount of risk for the county, provides for a guaranteed maximum price early on in it. It is a qualification-based process. We can design to budget. Important for us, single point of accountability and not having finger pointing during the construction between engineers and contractors that we would have separate contracts with, more collaboration and project compatibility. So with that, if there's any questions from the board, I'd be happy to try to answer them, and if not, we'll take you back to those two agenda items.
Mr. Rushing, I believe, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you could, please, Ed, go back to the slide that showed where the water lines are placed in Union County. Okay, go to the next one. There you go, that one. You know, Ed, several meetings that I've had with you and the county manager and other commissioners and, you know, 2-on-1s, things like that, I've expressed concern about the areas around the water plant being served by the water plant. I think over several years to get support from the communities in that area, you know, elected officials and folks have said that there's going to be a water supply for northeastern Union County. When I look at this blue, dark blue transmission line, the only thing I see is moving water from the plant over to the west part of the county. I know it's to serve that basin, but why would we not serve the area like of Unionville and those areas where they're already getting supplies from somewhere? Why would we not shift that supply line, and instead of spending, what's the projected cost on that transmission line?
I'm thinking the transmission line, the finished water transmission line is probably $30 million.
How much?
$30 million.
$30 million. So why would I not take, as a county commissioner, as an elected official trying to do what's best for the citizens of the county, why would I not take that same money and make arteries to connect to these lines that are already there and supply the water within just a few miles of the plant versus taking it all the way across the county? You know, we've talked about bringing the water in from Anson County. Well, we could serve Wingate, Marshville, we could serve eastern Union County and that basin with just maybe making some more transmission, not transmission lines, supply lines, where actually people can tap onto it. There's fire hydrants associated with it. That's a lot of money that could be used to deliver water to the citizens of Union County versus transferring it from one side of the county to the other side of the county at no benefit because it cannot be tapped onto.
Well, the benefit, Commissioner, is being able to connect the water treatment plant to our distribution system. So this line doesn't get tapped into by residents, but is connected to all of our major water lines along the route.
Right. So I'm looking at
each of these point of connections, we are taking this finished water and distributing it into our distribution system.
But
right now, our water from Anson essentially comes up this route here and connects them in this direction.
Where does Unionville get its water from?
Unionville is getting their water predominantly from the Anson supply at this point. I think the dividing line runs about like like this.
Okay.
So this part of Unionville is probably getting Anson water. It's coming up through Olive Branch and up through this way, pump station at the landfill that pumps it up into this direction. So this line does feed the distribution system. It's just not a line that goes from point A at the water plant to point B here. This line, actually, we have an existing project now that continues this and connects up into the rest of our distribution on that side. And that's an ongoing project in this year's CIP.
Is that not an interbasin transfer? Are you saying we're gonna use that line and go south of 74?
Well, it connects up with the system. So our IVT line is about here.
Right.
So it'll connect up with the system on this side. So the basin line is right about along this road here, which is Old Monroe Highway.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've said since I've got on the board, I'm very much supportive of the Yadkin supply. I'm very concerned that the Yadkin supply is going to be used for something besides supplying Union County residents completely with water. I believe that that money could be spent better hooking on and moving it with many little pipes instead of one big pipe. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion.
Commissioner, I'm not certain I understand. I mean, we cannot eliminate this pipeline and replace it with multiple small pipelines that would tie into all of these areas. I mean, those lines already exist.
Right.
And there is a need. Part of the benefit of this project and part of the benefit of running a major line across county is it builds a tremendous amount of redundancy for the county. So right now we are, as you heard earlier, we can't get enough water from the Catawba plant, regardless of our IVT, to come in and meet emergency needs over on the Atkins side of the county, and vice versa. This pipeline will give us that ability that if either one of those treatment plants went down in a catastrophe, some emergency, we could at least meet the average daily demand of the entire county from either one of those plants. And that is a huge benefit to our customers to be able to have that kind of resiliency and reliability in our water distribution system. And we need to connect up to these lines. So we need to connect the water plant to our existing major water lines which run up and feed this area. So we're going to need to run a pipeline to make those connections. You just can't run off in these other directions. We've got to get this pipe network connected to that system.
So if we lose that Anson County, because you just gave a presentation where you're saying the Anson County water may not work for us, and so now we're not going to try to take lines down to Marshville and that area to serve those communities?
Excuse me. Right now, there's existing water mains that come down this direction that are being used to pump water up from Anson, and ultimately, within the next 10 years, we will have to build another pipeline off of this down in this direction to meet projected growth in that area.
So you're wanting another transmission line, not a...
Yeah, there'll be another 16, 18-inch line. I'm not sure what size it is. It's in the
What's the maximum?
outside the 6-year plan.
What's the maximum size that you can connect to?
I believe we do not tap anything smaller than an 18-inch line.
Okay, so anything 18 inches and below can be connected to
It's
anything,
really a matter
anything
of
above 18 inches.
functionality of the pipe rather than just the size. But in our system, typically if lines are smaller than 18 inches, they are local water distribution lines and not major transmission lines.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is maintain the integrity of that transmission line.
Right.
Every time you tap into it, you decrease its integrity.
Right, and again, I'm not going to support this. I'm not. I've said it for 3 years now, and I'm not going to support this. And we've not seen anything alternatives. We've not seen anything about trying to get water to more residents or going down main arteries. Highway 205, all the highways that we could take down water in these areas, and this is just not what we're working toward. We're working to shift more water to the western side of the county. I understand that's where the demand is, but it's
No, Commissioner, I'm correct. The purpose of this project is to meet the water supply demands in the Yadkin Basin, which is
Right.
this part of the county.
Right.
So it's the part of the county you're seeing on the map, it's from here over.
So we
And
have,
that's what we're serving with this project, not the western part of the county.
we have City of Monroe that has water available for emergencies. We have, we have.
City of
the-
Monroe has an interconnect with us to meet their emergency.
That does not have any, they do not have any interconnect?
We have a number of interconnects, but we are a wholesale provider to Monroe. of up to
Right,
2
we
million
give them
gallons.
2 million gallons a day or more.
Yeah.
And so that's what I see this plant being the supply of. I see that we have issues in the western part of the county where we need water. We're supplying it through interbasin transfers, some right now. We're trying to eliminate those, correct?
It's from the west to the east. So
Right.
we're moving water from the Catawba
Right.
to the Yadkin Basin through our IBT, and we're maxing that IBT out. That's why we're building this plant.
Right.
Because we can't meet the growth needs in the Yadkin Basin because of an IBT limitation, and also because our Catawba plant's not big enough.
Right.
But even if we could expand the Catawba plant, our IBT legislation will not allow us to send that water over to meet our needs in Unionville, Fairview, Fairfield, Hemby Bridge, Indian Trail.
Is
Those
this
are the
to-
areas we're serving by this new project.
Is this to feed the water tanks, and what's the maximum size or minimum size pipe that can feed a water tank, a water tower?
It depends on, I mean, that's where, this pipeline does not feed into the water tanks. This feeds into other transmission lines which go to our pump stations, which, again, we have 6, 7 pressure zones in the system. Each one of them has a separate pump station.
So this blue line, where does it end?
The blue line actually continues then over to the Watkins Road pump station that is on Watkins right off of Rocky River Road in 84. And it's the output from that pump station. And it does become the major cross connection between the two halves of the county.
Right, and I don't see any lines.
No, it's not part of this project, it's part of a separate project that's under design right now.
So we're looking at those lines going to, that's part of the, what we just voted on.
That's part of existing improvements that we needed to make to get water up to Indian Trail. So we've got a project on the way to connect up to our Watkins Road pump station, bring that line across 74 to connect up to this, but also bring it up north to the Indian Trail area to connect with a new water tower that we're building up there. And that project is primarily to meet the needs in the eastern part of the county, in the Indian Trail, Stallings area,
The western part of the county.
western, excuse me.
Like I said, I think for 3 years I've been ignored on this a little bit, so I'm not going to vote for it
Well,
tonight.
Commissioner, I would suggest that, and I think we have 2 different issues here. We have, how do we
Yeah, but
meet
you're
the
asking me to
long-term
vote.
water supply needs of Union County?
Yeah.
And how do you, as a board, want us to proceed with short line water extensions to residents in the eastern part of the county? And I think you have 2 different policy issues in front of you. How do we extend water lines to meet retail customers? And right now, the board has an existing short line extension policy, which granted is very, very limited in nature. This project does nothing to address that one way or the other. This project is a regional water supply program. It provides water capacity for overall county needs. Without this project, you will not have water in 2021.
For new growth,
You will not have any new water as of 2021
for new growth.
for new growth.
Further questions? Mr. Helms?
Yes, I heard you say, maybe I misunderstood you, and I apologize if I did. When you were talking earlier about the line going up to Unionville or crossing that, you made a reference to like they would get water off of this line, but I know my conversation with the county manager today, this 36-inch line doesn't get any tapping.
That's correct. What we're doing with this pipe is connecting this new 36-inch line into all of these other existing water lines that are here. And that's what will feed this whole area with water through those existing networks.
So
What I was
that will be-
commenting on is the existing 12-inch water line that runs from New Salem, from 218 along New Salem Road, along this existing alignment. So there is a 12-inch water line there today that residents in that area can tap into. So that line exists right now.
So you're saying you're gonna tap into that 36-inch line at some of those intersections?
We are gonna make connections. We're not gonna tap and drill a pipe. We're gonna make T connections into that with our existing water mains and tee off of that with water mains.
So you'll make a connection it'll
Mhm.
feed that as well.
Oh,
As-
again, the purpose of this project is to feed this area. That's the only purpose of this project, is to feed this area of the county. The western part of the county can be fed through the Catawba Water Treatment Plant. We could expand the Catawba plant and meet the western county needs from now until 75 years or more from now. We have huge capacity in our withdrawal permit from South Carolina. Right now, that's a 36 million gallon a day plant. We have 18 million gallons of that. We have a permit for 100 million gallons per day. So meeting the western side of the county's water needs is easy. We can expand the Catawba plant to do that. Meeting the eastern part of the county, that's what this project is all about.
And I understand, and I totally agree with that. But this doesn't demonstrate how we're going to address the rest of the citizens in the Yadkin Basin.
It does not. It absolutely, and my comment to Commissioner is I think that is a separate, distinct policy issue for the board to take up on what you would like us to do and give us policy direction on what you would like us to do in terms of short line extensions to residential or other developments in the eastern part of Union County. I mean, right now, the policy of the board is that developers pay for all water line extensions. Now, we're scheduled to come back to you with an update on the short line extension policy. But to me, those are separate and distinct issues of how do you take advantage of the capacity you're creating here to extend lines if that's the desire of the board. If we don't create the capacity, we certainly can't extend the lines because we'll have no capacity to serve. So to me, this needs to come first. We need to create the capacity. We need to secure that capacity for the county's long-term growth. And then we look to the board to give us direction on if it's the board's desire to move water lines into certain areas of the county, that's certainly an area we can take up and get direction from the board on.
Well, I'm kind of like Commissioner Rushing. I understand going to the water treatment plant. My concerns are after you leave the water treatment plant, how do we ensure that our citizens are protected? And he mentioned fire hydrants, and that's critical. I'd also ask too, can you put a transmission line and a 12-inch line in the same ditch, or is that a no-no?
There'd be a certain distance apart. I'm assuming we are not looking at putting this on the same ditch as the 12-inch. Probably put it on the other side of the road, just easy construction.
Okay. So we get to buy right away for two different lines.
Possibly. I mean, that's a design detail we'll get into as we start detailing out the project. What's the best way to align this project? What side of the road do you want to be on? How much right-of-way is there? How much easement exists currently right now? So those are design details we'll look at. And all we're asking the board tonight is authorization that we can utilize a design-build methodology to move forward with this project.
Are these split into two separate projects?
Yes, they are.
So item 11 is the treatment plant and the treatment plant?
No, it's the raw water intake and
The raw water line.
and the raw water line. And the second project is the treatment plant and the finished water distribution.
Further questions? Okay, a little assistance, Madam Manager. Have we, through our discussion, established the criteria for determining the circumstances, et cetera?
Yes, sir, you have for both item 11 and item 12.
Okay, so with regard to item 11, which is the Yadkin River Water Supply Raw Water Intake Pumping Station and Raw Water Transmission Main Project, we need to, or address authorizing the use of the design build project delivery method for that project. Is that correct?
There are actually two actions that you have to take, which is establish that you have established the criteria for determining the circumstances under which the design-build method is appropriate, as well as authorize the use of design-build project delivery for this project.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, what the board will be doing is establishing the criteria in your packet, as outlined in your packet and explained in your agenda summary.
So we would require a motion to establish.
Establish these criteria.
Okay. I'm clear now. Having that
And
said.
I apologize if I
No, no,
confused you with
no,
my
no.
earlier response.
It was a question of whether we assumed that we'd done it or whether we needed to take action and do it, okay? And can we do 1 and 2 together? I.e., establish the criteria, does that require 2 separate motions or 1? Okay, that being said, I will move that we establish the criteria for determining the circumstances under which the design-build method is appropriate for the Yadkin River Water Supply Project, raw water intake pumping station, and raw water transmission main project, and authorize the use of the design-build project delivery method for that project. Any discussion? Commissioner Rushing.
I'm sorry.
You're right.
Ms. Manager, you said 11 stops at the treatment plant?
That's my understanding.
Does not address the transmission lines coming out of the water treatment plant?
That's correct.
It stops at the treatment plant, because that is raw water coming into the treatment plant.
Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you. Again, I'm not ready to vote on this in the affirmative because all the 2-on-1 meetings that we've had, all the discussions that we've had where we've not acted as a board, we've not really given much direction as a board. There are a lot of concerns that I have about this and the appearance of this and things that we're involved in. I want to make sure that we've used every dollar that we can to get water to the citizens of Union County. That's what they've been told. They were told that prior to me coming back on the board. And I want to make sure that we've done everything and spent every dollar possible to make that happen, not to just shift water to the other side of the county. So I'm not going to support this tonight. I want to see more details. I want to see alternatives we've discussed that I've never seen. Just for the board to take action on those things, and if you need board action on it, then we should be doing this and no more 2-on-1s about this issue.
Well, I believe that the Yadkin Water Supply project is contained within our master plan, which has been voted on by the board.
Right, and I have no problem with the Yadkin River Water Supply.
That's what this is, Commissioner.
But-
This is the Yadkin River.
Yeah,
Water
but you
Supply
put a
Project.
blue line. You put
Support.
a blue line on here that I've talked about several times, and I want a little bit more discussion about it before I vote to give a blessing to doing something that I've completely been questioning whether we should do it or use the money in a better way.
Commissioner, I'm at a loss for what other alternatives the board might be looking for.
Well, I'm at a loss as to why we've not been presented any alternatives.
The board was presented with a number of alternatives on site selection. As part of the project, we identified 3 different areas. We through the master planning and board workshops.
And don't confuse-
Brought that down to 2. The board agreed to those 2. Within those areas,
Don't-
we identified the properties that were available.
Don't
and
confuse-
in closed session with the board, we
Right.
received direction to move forward with acquisition.
Don't confuse that with a big transmission line to go across the county. Don't confuse my support of that. I support that. I've been supportive of getting that in there. I even compromised and said I would rather have it up in closer to the county line where we could serve more customers. But, this transmission line, I've always had a problem with it. I've been pretty clear with all the staff that I've had a problem with that. And I'm still having issues with it. I would like to see some alternatives and some costs there.
Are you looking for alternatives on how we would connect the treatment plant then to the existing distribution system?
Of why we're not seeing things going to Marshville, Wingate first.
They are. I mean, that is what this project does, Commissioner. It connects to our existing grid that distributes water to those areas. That is exactly what this project does.
That's not what I'm seeing.
I will be happy to sit down and walk through this in more detail with you.
As the board, yeah, I would like to see that.
Further questions? As I understand it, this motion is regarding the raw water intake and getting the water to New Salem to the treatment plant.
Yes.
No transmission lines on what we're fixing to vote on now. Okay, everybody clear on the motion?
We're voting on item 11 first, right?
That's right.
That's to get it to the,
Yes.
To the proposed area for the water treatment plant.
this is no way, shape, or form the blue line. the
Yes, sir.
transmission.
That is an item that's contained within item 12.
Okay.
Everybody clear on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Okay, that takes us to item 12.
Item 12 is the same process in which the board would have to establish that they met the criteria and provide direction that we use the design build as the delivery method. This project includes the water treatment plant and the finished water line.
I will move that we establish the criteria for determining the circumstances under which the design build method is appropriate for the Yadkin River Water Supply Project Water Treatment Plant and finished water transmission main project, and authorize the use of the design build project delivery method for the project. Discussion.
And again, Mr. Chairman, this is the one I'm not going to support. I just want more information. Maybe if we could do it at a later date after we get more information, but I'm not going to support this tonight.
We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Ed. Takes us to county manager's comments.
I have no comments this evening.
Okay, Commissioner Helms.
I appreciate our law enforcement. I can't thank you enough. I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and let's move forward and make progress for Union County.
Commissioner Akins.
I just want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. Reminder that it is cold outside. Bundle up, stay warm. If you have pets outside, bring them inside.
Commissioner
Good evening.
Commissioner Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd echo the comments made by the other two commissioners, and also would like to see something at our next meeting. We discussed in November working toward the bus garage, doing a solution for their utilities.
Mr. Platte will be on your agenda on the 16th in a work session format, speaking to that issue.
Great. That would be great. Thank you.
Just one comment with regard to citizens and coming to meetings, and we often get accused of maybe just sitting here listening and not ever taking any action. I appreciate you folks that came and talked about the road, and I certainly understand your concern. We act on information that we're provided at the time, and the board acted at that time. I guess I would ask the manager. I did hear some information with regard to similar names, and I don't recall that we discussed that maybe. So I would ask that you maybe look into that in terms of the confusion over the two names being very similar, as whether that's frowned upon. Could you do that for me?
I certainly will.
Thank you. Everybody stay warm, and I wish you a good evening. Motion to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye.